Jake Martinez wiped the sweat from his forehead as he worked the mining. Drilled deep into the rocky surface of Kepler 442b, the red sun hung low in the alien sky, casting long shadows across the mining camp. He had been working on this distant planet for 2 years now, extracting precious metals that Earth needed for its growing space fleet. The mining colony was small, but busy. About 300 humans lived and worked here, far from home but united by their shared purpose. Jake enjoyed the simple life. He woke up, worked his shift, ate dinner with his friends, and slept well each night. It was peaceful. Lisa Chun walked over to Jake's drilling station, carrying her scanner and sample bags. She was the colony's science officer, always looking for new discoveries in the rocks and soil. Her black hair was tied back in a ponytail, and her lab coat was covered in dust. "Find anything interesting today?" Jake asked, shutting off his drill for a moment. Lisa smiled and held up a small, glowing crystal. "This little beauty contains traces of quantum particles. Earth's scientists will love studying it." Pete Johnson jogged up to them, his mechanic's coveralls stained with grease and dirt. He was a big man with kind eyes and calloused hands that could fix anything. "Hey, you two need to see this. My sensors are picking up something weird in orbit." Jake and Lisa followed Pete to the communications building. Inside, the screen showed dozens of large ships approaching their planet. The vessels were dark and angular, unlike anything humans had built. "Those aren't our ships," Lisa whispered, her face pale. Pete nodded grimly. "I've never seen anything like them. They're huge, and they're coming straight for us." The colony's warning sirens began to wail. Jake's heart raced as he realized what was happening. After decades of searching, humans had finally made contact with alien life. But these visitors did not seem friendly. The first alien ship landed with a thunderous crash just outside the mining camp. Its hull was black as space, covered in sharp edges and strange symbols. A ramp lowered from the belly of the vessel, and steam hissed out into the thin air. Jake watched in horror as creatures emerged from the darkness. They were tall and thin, standing nearly 8 feet high. Their skin was pale gray, and their faces were angular with large, dark eyes. They wore black armor that seemed to absorb light. These were the Zephyrians, though Jake did not know their name yet. The aliens moved with deadly purpose. They carried weapons that hummed with energy, and they spread out across the mining camp in perfect formation. Behind them came something even more terrifying. The beasts that followed the Zephyrian soldiers were nightmares made real. They stood as tall as the aliens but moved on 4 powerful legs. Their bodies were covered in dark fur, and their heads were like those of giant wolves. Massive jaws held teeth as long as human fingers, and their claws could tear through metal. Their eyes glowed amber in the dim light. "What are those things?" Pete breathed, his voice shaking. Lisa gripped Jake's arm. "Apex predators. They're using them as weapons." The Zephyrians began rounding up the human miners. Their movements were efficient and ruthless. Anyone who tried to run was quickly caught by the Volf-like creatures. Anyone who tried to fight was stunned by alien energy weapons. Jake wanted to help his fellow colonists, but there was nothing he could do. The aliens were too fast, too organized, and too powerful. Within an hour, every human in the colony had been captured. The aliens herded their prisoners into groups. Jake found himself with Lisa and Pete, along with about 50 other colonists. One of the massive Volf creatures stood guard over them. It was slightly smaller than the others, but no less dangerous. Its amber eyes seemed to study each human. Carefully, an alien that seemed to be their leader approached the group. It spoke in a harsh, clicking language to the beast. The creature's ears twitched, and it moved closer to the humans. Jake could smell its wild scent and hear its deep breathing. "Do not move," the alien said in perfect English, its voice cold and mechanical. "Do not speak. Do not resist. You are now property of the Zephyrian Empire." Jake felt anger burning in his chest, but he stayed silent. Getting himself killed would not help anyone. The aliens loaded their human prisoners onto the transport ship. The interior was dark and cramped, with metal walls and no windows. The air was thick and tasted of strange chemicals. Jake and his Friends were pushed into a holding area with 30 other colonists. The Volf creature followed them inside. It settled near the entrance, blocking any hope of escape. Its glowing eyes never left the humans, and its massive body remained perfectly still except for the slow rise and fall of its breathing dot as the ship lifted off from the planet's surface. Jake felt a deep sadness. He was leaving behind the only home he had known for years. Worse, he did not know what fate awaited him and his friends. The journey through space lasted several days. The aliens gave their prisoners just enough food and water to survive. The holding area smelled terrible, and many of the colonists became sick from fear and the recycled air. Jake spent his time watching the Volf creature that guarded them. The other humans called it names like monster and demon, but Jake saw something different. The beast was intelligent. Its eyes followed conversations, and its ears moved when people spoke softly. Sometimes it tilted its head as if trying to understand human words. Unlike the other Volf creatures on the ship, this one never snarled or snapped at the prisoners. It simply watched and waited. Jake began to wonder if there was more to these beasts than just mindless killing machines. On the third day, the ship shuddered as it entered a planet's atmosphere. Through the small gaps in the walls, Jake could see a dead, rocky world with no signs of life. The ship landed with a bone-jarring crash. The aliens marched their prisoners off the transport and across a barren landscape. In the distance, Jake could see a massive building complex built into the side of a mountain. It was all sharp angles and dark metal, like the ship's, but much larger. The Volf creature padded alongside the group of humans, its great paws silent on the rocky ground. Jake noticed that it stayed close to his group rather than ranging widely. Like the other beasts, it seemed almost protective, though Jake knew that was impossible. The facility was even more intimidating up close. Guard towers rose from the corners, and strange lights pulsed along the walls. Armed aliens patrolled the perimeter, and more Volf creatures prowled the grounds. Inside, the building was a maze of corridors and chambers. The aliens separated the human prisoners into smaller groups. Jake found himself alone in a small, windowless cell with metal walls and a single light in the ceiling. The floor was cold and hard. The Volf creature settled down just outside Jake's cell door. Through the bars, Jake could see its amber eyes watching him. The beast was close enough that Jake could have reached through and touched its fur, but he was not brave enough to try. Hours passed in silence. Jake tried to sleep, but the fear and uncertainty kept him awake. He thought about his friends and wondered if they were safe. He thought about Earth and whether he would ever see it again. Finally, exhaustion overcame his fear, and Jake drifted off to sleep on the cold floor. His dreams were filled with images of home, of the mining colony, and strangely of amber eyes watching over him in the darkness. When he woke, the Volf creature was still there, still watching. Something in those alien eyes seemed different now, less hostile, almost curious. Jake did not know it yet, but his journey with this strange guardian was just beginning. Jake woke to the sound of footsteps in the corridor outside his cell. His body ached from sleeping on the hard metal floor, and his mouth was dry as dust. The Volf creature was still there, lying just beyond the bars with its massive head resting on its front paws. Two Zephyrian guards approached the cell. They spoke to each other in their clicking language, then one of them activated a device on his belt. The cell door slid open with a grinding sound. "Human, come," one of the aliens commanded in broken English. Jake stood slowly, his legs stiff and sore. The Volf creature rose as well, its amber eyes fixed on the guards. For a moment, Jake thought he saw something like concern in those alien eyes. The guards led Jake through the facility's twisting corridors. The Volf creature followed close behind, its claws clicking softly on the metal floor. They passed other cells where Jake glimpsed his fellow colonists. Some waved weakly when they saw him. Others just stared with hollow, frightened eyes. They entered a large room filled with strange machines and glowing screens. A female Zephyrian stood in the center, taller than the guards and wearing a white coat over her dark armor. Her pale skin seemed to glow under the harsh lights, and her black eyes held cold intelligence. "I am Dr. Elena Vasquez," she said. In perfect English, you will call me doctor. I study humans now, you will help me learn. Jake said nothing. He had decided to reveal as little as possible about himself and his people. Dr. Vasquez gestured to a metal table surrounded by scanning devices. Lie down, do not resist, resistance brings pain. Jake had no choice. He lay on the cold table while alien machines hummed to life around him. Beams of light passed over his body, and needles drew samples of his blood. The doctor watched everything. On her screens, making notes in her alien writing, the Volf creature positioned itself where it could see both Jake and the doctor. Its ears were forward and alert, as if it was listening to everything. The examination was painful and humiliating. Dr. Vasquez tested Jake's reflexes, scanned his brain, and took measurements of every part of his body. She seemed particularly interested in his hands and eyes. Humans are weak, she said as she worked. Small muscles, thin bones, slow reflexes. Yet you survive on many worlds. This puzzles me. Jake gritted his teeth and endured the tests. He noticed that whenever the doctor's procedures became especially painful, the Volf creature would shift position or make a soft sound. It was subtle, but Jake began to think the beast was reacting to his distress. After what felt like hours, the examination ended. The guards returned Jake to his cell, and the Volf creature resumed its position outside the bars. Jake collapsed. On the floor, exhausted and sore, over the following days, the routine repeated. Each morning, the guards would take Jake to Dr. Vasquez for more tests. The alien scientist seemed obsessed with understanding human behavior and capabilities. On the fourth day, she introduced a new test. Jake was placed in a room with moving targets and told to hit them with a metal rod. When he succeeded, he received a small amount of food. When he failed, he got nothing. Show me human learning. Dr. Vasquez commanded from behind a protective barrier. Jake quickly figured out the patterns of the moving targets. His engineering training had taught him to solve problems step by step. Soon he was hitting every target with ease. The doctor made excited notes. Excellent adaptation. Human brain processes new information rapidly. The Volf creature watched these sessions with growing interest. Jake noticed that its head would move as it tracked the targets, almost as if it was following the game. On the seventh day, Dr. Vasquez introduced combat drones to the test. Small flying machines buzzed around Jake, shooting harmless but painful energy bolts at him. He had to avoid them while still hitting his targets. This was much harder. Jake dove and rolled, trying to stay ahead of the drones while focusing on his task. Sweat poured down his face as he struggled with the impossible challenge. The Volf creature began to pace outside the testing chamber. Its amber eyes never left Jake as he fought against the mechanical attackers. When Jake stumbled and fell, struck by multiple energy bolts, the beast let out a low growl. Dr. Vasquez increased the difficulty. More drones appeared, moving faster and shooting more frequently. Jake was overwhelmed. He could not avoid all the attacks while hitting his targets. Pain filled his body as the energy bolts found their mark again and again. Finally, Jake collapsed. Gasping and shaking, the drones continued to attack his fallen form until the doctor called them off. Interesting, she said, making notes. Human reaches breaking point but continues trying. Most species surrender much sooner. The guards dragged Jake back to his cell. He could barely walk, and his vision was blurry from exhaustion. As they pushed him through the door, he heard something that made him freeze. The Volf creature was making a sound he had never heard before. It was not a growl or a snarl. It was a soft, mournful whine like a dog mourning its master. Jake looked at the beast through the bars. For the first time, he saw something in those amber eyes that looked almost human. It was sadness. That night, as Jake lay recovering from his injuries, he heard a scraping sound. He opened his eyes to see the Volf creature pushing something through the bars with its massive paw. It was a container of water, taken from somewhere in the facility. Jake stared in amazement. The creature had brought him water. Not because it was ordered to, but because it wanted to help. "Thank you," Jake whispered. The Volf creature's ears twitched at the sound of his voice. It settled down closer to the bars as if it wanted to be Near the injured human dot over the next few days, Jake began to talk to his guardian. At first he just said simple things like, "Hello," and "Thank you." The creature always listened, its head tilted and ears forward. Gradually, Jake began to tell longer stories. He talked about Earth, about trees and oceans and blue skies. He described his childhood dog, a golden retriever named Buddy, who used to fetch sticks and sleep at the foot of his bed. The Volf creature seemed fascinated by these stories. Sometimes it would make soft sounds as if trying to communicate. Jake began to realize that this was not just a mindless beast. There was intelligence behind those amber eyes, and perhaps even emotion. Jake started to notice other things about his guardian. Unlike the other Volf creatures in the facility, this one never showed aggression toward the human prisoners. It never snarled or snapped when humans came near. Instead, it seemed almost protective. During one particularly brutal testing session, Jake was forced to fight 3 combat drones at once while solving a complex puzzle. The task was impossible, designed to push him beyond his limits. As Jake struggled and failed repeatedly, Dr. Vasquez increased the intensity of the attacks. Jake was on his knees, barely conscious, when he heard a sound that changed everything. His Volf guardian was standing at the observation window, its massive body tense with anger. It was growling, not at Jake, but at Dr. Vasquez. The alien scientist noticed too. "Fascinating," she said. "Unit 7 shows protective behavior toward the test subject. This was not programmed." Unit 7, that was what they called his guardian. Jake filed the information away, though he suspected the creature had a real name of its own. That night, as Jake recovered from his injuries, he spoke quietly to Unit 7. "You have a real name, don't you?" he asked. "Something they took away from you." The creature's ears flicked forward, and it made a soft sound that almost sounded like agreement. "I'm going to call you Grimfang," Jake said. "You look fierce, but I think you're protecting me. Is that okay?" The creature that had been known only as Unit 7 lifted its great head and looked directly into Jake's eyes. For a moment, human and alien predator stared at each other across the bars of the cell. Then Grimfang did something that no Zephyrian had ever seen one of their weapons do. He lowered his head in what looked very much like a nod. In that moment, Jake realized that he was no longer alone in this terrible place. He had found an unlikely friend in the most dangerous creature he had ever met. And somehow that friendship was about to change everything. The next morning brought new troubles. Dr. Vasquez arrived at Jake's cell with 2 guards and another Volf creature. This new beast was larger than Grimfang, with scars across its face and cold, empty eyes. "Unit 7 shows signs of malfunction," the doctor announced. "It will be replaced with Unit 3 for today's testing." Jake felt his heart sink as he watched Grimfang being led away. The creature looked back at him once, and Jake saw something like worry in those amber eyes. Unit 3 was everything Grimfang was not. It snarled constantly, snapped at Jake whenever he moved too quickly, and seemed eager to cause harm. During the testing session, when Jake struggled with a particularly difficult challenge, Unit 3 moved as if to attack him. Only Dr. Vasquez's sharp command stopped the beast from striking. "Interesting," she muttered, making notes. Unit 7's presence affected test subjects' performance. Humans showed less stress, better focus. Unit 3 creates opposite effect. Jake's performance was terrible that day. Without Grimfang's calming presence, he felt alone and afraid. The combat drones seemed faster, the puzzles harder, and the energy bolts more painful. By the end of the session, he could barely stand when the guards returned him to his cell. Jake was relieved to see Grimfang waiting for him. The creature examined Jake carefully as if checking for new injuries. Then he did something remarkable. He lay down right against the cell bars, as close to Jake as possible. That night, Jake began to tell Grimfang about his friends Lisa and Pete. He described how they had worked together on the mining colony, how they had supported each other through difficult times. "Friendship is important to humans," Jake explained quietly. "We're stronger when we help each other. I think you understand that, don't you?" Grimfang made a soft sound that Jake had learned meant agreement. Over the following days, Jake began to share more personal stories. He told Grimfang about his family on Earth, about his parents who had died in a transport accident, about the loneliness he had felt before finding his place among the miners. The Zephyrians took you from your family too, didn't they? Jake asked one evening. This time, Grimfang's response was different. He lifted his great head and let out a long, mournful howl that echoed through the corridors. It was a sound of loss and grief that needed no translation. Jake reached through the bars and, for the first time, touched Grimfang's fur. It was surprisingly soft beneath his fingers. The massive predator did not pull away. Instead, he leaned into the gentle contact. What were you like before they changed you? Jake whispered. Grimfang turned his head to look at Jake. In those amber eyes, Jake saw a flash of something that might have been memory. The creature opened his mouth and made a series of soft sounds, almost like he was trying to speak. Jake listened carefully. The sounds were not random. They had rhythm and pattern like a language. That's your real name, isn't it? Jake said. With excitement. Not Unit 7, your real name. Grimfang repeated the sounds, more clearly this time. To Jake's ears, it sounded like Grimfang, but with subtle differences that his human throat could not reproduce. I'll keep calling you Grimfang, but I know it's not quite right, Jake said. Someday, maybe you can teach me to say it properly. The creature's tail moved in what Jake was learning to recognize as pleasure. As the days passed, Jake noticed changes in Grimfang's behavior. The creature became more alert during the testing sessions, more protective when the guards handled Jake roughly. Other Volf creatures in the facility began to watch Grimfang with what looked like confusion. During one testing session, Jake overheard Dr. Vasquez talking to her assistants. Unit 7's neural patterns are changing, she said with concern. The conditioning is breaking down. We may need to recondition the entire batch. Jake felt a chill of fear. He did not know what reconditioning meant, but it sounded terrible. That night he shared his concerns with Grimfang. They want to change you back, Jake said. Take away everything that makes you yourself. We can't let that happen. Grimfang's eyes glowed brighter in the darkness. He made a low, growling sound that Jake understood meant determination. We need to escape, Jake continued, but I don't know how. This place is like a fortress. Over the next few days, Jake began to pay more attention to the facility's routines. He watched the guards, counted their numbers, and noted their patrol schedules. As an engineer, he was trained to see how systems worked and find their weaknesses. The facility ran on a strict schedule. Guards changed shifts every 8 hours. The Volf creatures were fed twice a day in a large communal area. Dr. Vasquez had her own laboratory and office in the upper levels of the building. Jake also noticed that other Volf creatures were beginning to act strangely. Some would watch him during his sessions with curious eyes instead of hostile ones. Others seemed to react when Grimfang made certain sounds. You're talking to them, aren't you? Jake asked one evening. Teaching them what you've learned? Grimfang's response was a series of soft barks and whines. Jake was beginning to understand some of the creature's language. This sounded like agreement and hope. The breakthrough came during a particularly difficult testing session. Dr. Vasquez had introduced new combat drones that were faster and more aggressive than before. Jake was struggling to keep up, dodging and weaving while trying to solve a complex mathematical puzzle. One of the drones got past his defenses and struck him hard in the shoulder. Jake spun and fell, crying out in pain. The drone prepared to strike again. Suddenly, there was a tremendous crash. Grimfang had broken through the observation window and landed in the testing chamber. The massive predator placed himself between Jake and the combat drone, snarling with fury. Stop! Dr. Vasquez shouted over the facility's alarms. Unit 7. Return to position immediately. Grimfang ignored her. His attention was focused entirely on protecting Jake. When the combat drone tried to circle around him, Grimfang destroyed it with one swipe of his powerful claws. Security guards rushed into the chamber with energy weapons drawn. Grimfang stood over Jake's fallen form, ready to fight an entire army if necessary. Fascinating, Dr. Vasquez said, even as chaos erupted around her. Complete breakdown of conditioning. Unit 7 has formed a pack bond with the human. Jake struggled to his feet, one hand on Grimfang's shoulder for support. He could feel the creature's muscles tensed for battle, could hear the deep growl rumbling in his chest. "Easy, friend," Jake said softly. "We're outnumbered." Grimfang looked back at him, and Jake saw intelligence and calculation in those amber eyes. The creature was not acting on instinct alone. He was thinking, planning, choosing his moment. Slowly, Grimfang stepped back. But he did not move away from Jake. The message was clear. He would protect his human friend, but he would not start a fight they could not win. Dr. Vasquez ordered both of them taken to separate holding areas. As the guards led Jake away, he heard Grimfang calling out in his own language. The sound echoed through the facility, and Jake heard other Volf creatures responding from their various positions. They were talking to each other, Jake realized. Grimfang was not just awakening to his own freedom. He was awakening others. In his new, smaller cell, Jake began to plan the facility's routines, the guard schedules, the locations of his friends. He put together all the information he had gathered. If Grimfang could rally the other Volf creatures, they might have a chance. But first, he needed to find Lisa and Pete. He could not escape without them. As if reading his thoughts, Grimfang appeared outside his new cell. The creature had somehow avoided the guards and found him. In his mouth he carried something that made Jake's heart leap with hope. It was Lisa's scanner, the one she had been carrying when they were captured. Grimfang had found her. "Can you lead me to them?" Jake asked quietly. Grimfang dropped the scanner and made a soft sound of agreement. Then he began to draw lines in the dust on the floor with his claw. It was crude, but Jake recognized it as a map of the facility. His friend was not just a powerful predator. He was an intelligent being who understood strategy and planning. Together they were going to save everyone. The escape would begin tomorrow. Jake woke to the sound of marching boots in the corridor. Through the bars of his cell, he could see more guards than usual moving through the facility. Something was different today, and the tension in the air made his skin crawl. Grimfang was pacing restlessly outside his cell. The great creature's ears were flat against his head, and his amber eyes kept darting toward the upper levels of the facility. He was clearly agitated about something. "What's wrong, friend?" Jake asked quietly. Before Grimfang could respond, Dr. Vasquez appeared with a full squad of guards. She looked angry and determined, her pale face set in hard lines. "Today we make an example," she announced to Jake. "Your defiance ends now. You will watch what happens to those who corrupt our weapons." The guards opened Jake's cell and dragged him out despite Grimfang's warning growls. They forced him to walk through the facility's corridors, past other cells where his fellow humans watched with frightened eyes. Grimfang followed close behind, his massive body tense and ready for action. They entered a large chamber that Jake had never seen before. It was shaped like an arena, with raised seats around a central platform. Guards were bringing in other human prisoners, including Lisa and Pete. Jake's heart leaped to see his friends alive, though they looked thin and scared, all the Volf creatures in the facility were being herded into the arena as well. Jake counted at least 20 of the massive predators, all standing in formation around the edges of the chamber. Their handlers kept them in line with electric prods and harsh commands. Dr. Vasquez climbed to a raised platform where she could address everyone in the arena. Her voice echoed off the metal walls as she began to speak. "Humans are weak," she declared. "They corrupt everything they touch. This one has damaged Unit 7 beyond repair. Today, Unit 7 will execute this human and order will be restored." Jake felt cold fear wash over him. They were going to force Grimfang to kill him in front of everyone. The alien scientists wanted to break both of them and show the other creatures what happened when they defied their masters. Guards pushed Jake onto the central platform. Grimfang was forced to follow, though Jake could see the creature fighting against his handlers every step of the way. The other Volf creatures watched with growing agitation as their handlers drove them closer to the platform. "Unit 7, Dr. Vasquez commanded. "Kill the human, now." Grimfang stood frozen on the platform, his great head turning between Jake And the alien scientist. His amber eyes were filled with conflict and pain. Jake could see the creature's internal struggle between his conditioning and his newfound friendship. "It's okay," Jake said softly, reaching out to touch Grimfang's massive shoulder. "I understand, you don't have a choice." But Grimfang pulled back from Jake's touch. The creature looked up at Dr. Vasquez, then at the other Volf creatures around the arena. His ears flicked forward, and he made a series of soft sounds that only his fellow predators could understand. Then Grimfang did something that sent shock waves through the entire facility. He threw back his great head and let out a thunderous roar that shook the walls. It was not the mindless bellow of a beast, but the battle cry of a free being who had chosen his side. The effect was immediate and devastating. Every Volf creature in the arena answered Grimfang's call with roars of their own. The sound was deafening, primal, and filled with rage that had been building for years. Chaos erupted as the creatures turned on their handlers, guards screamed, and fired their weapons, but the energy bolts barely slowed the massive predators. Claws and teeth that had been used to oppress now became instruments of liberation. Grimfang leaped from the platform toward Dr. Vasquez, the alien scientist. Tried to run, but there was nowhere to go. Jake watched as his friend landed just in front of the fleeing scientist, blocking her escape with a snarl that promised death. "Unit 7, stop!" she screamed. "I command you." Grimfang looked at her with contempt. Then he spoke, not in the harsh, clicking language of the Zephyrians, but in his own deep, rumbling voice. "My name is Grimfang," he said slowly in broken English. "I am no one's unit." Jake felt tears in his eyes as he heard his friend speak for the first time. The creature had been learning human language during all those quiet conversations in the cell. The battle raged throughout the arena as more Volf creatures broke free from their conditioning. Years of suppressed anger and pain erupted in a fury of claws and fangs. The Zephyrian guards, despite their weapons and armor, were no match for their own apex predators turned against them. Jake fought his way through the chaos to reach Lisa and Pete. His friends were huddled against a wall, staring in amazement at the carnage around them. "Jake," Lisa cried, throwing her arms around him. "What's happening? Revolution?" Jake replied with a grin. "Grimfang and his people are taking back their freedom." Pete pointed to a group of Volf creatures that had cornered several guards near the arena's main entrance. "Those things are on our side now?" "They're not things," Jake said firmly. "They're people. They've been slaves just like us." As the immediate fighting died down, Grimfang approached Jake and his friends. The great predator's fur was matted with alien blood, but his amber eyes were bright with triumph. "Friends safe?" Grimfang asked in his careful English. "Yes, thanks to you," Jake replied, reaching out to touch his friend's shoulder. This time, Grimfang leaned into the contact with something that might have been a smile. Other Volf creatures gathered around their leader, all looking to Grimfang for guidance. Jake realized that his friend had become more than just a free being. He had become a leader of his people. Lisa was examining one of the fallen guards with her scientific mind. "Jake, look at this," she said, holding up a small device. "It's some kind of neural controller. They were using these to control the creatures' minds." Pete was already working on a wall panel, his mechanical skills proving useful even in an alien facility. "I can override the door locks," he called out. "Get everyone out of here." As the arena doors opened, freed Volf creatures spread throughout the facility. The sound of battle echoed from every corridor as more guards fell to the liberated predators. Years of conditioning and control were being washed away in a tide of justified fury. Grimfang led Jake and his friends toward the facility's upper levels. They needed to find the communication center and any information about other human prisoners. Along the way, they encountered pockets of resistance from Zephyrian soldiers, but the Volf creatures made short work of them. Dr. Vasquez's laboratory. They found something that chilled Jake to the bone. Computer screens showed maps of human space, with attack routes and invasion plans marked in red. The Zephyrians were not just capturing random humans for experiments. They were planning a full-scale war. "Earth is their primary target," Lisa said, reading the alien text with growing horror. They plan to use the Volf creatures as shock troops for a planetary invasion? Jake felt sick. His homeworld, with its billions of innocent people, was in terrible danger. But now they had a chance to stop it. Grimfang studied the invasion plans with intelligent eyes. When he spoke, his words carried the weight of absolute determination. No more slaves, he said. No more killing for others. We fight for freedom now. Other Volf creatures had gathered in the laboratory, all looking to their leader for direction. Jake realized that this moment would determine the fate of both species. The decision they made here could save billions of lives. Will you help us? Jake asked Grimfang. Will you fight against the Zephyrians instead of for them? Grimfang's response came not just from him, but from every freed creature in the room. They raised their voices in a howl that spoke of brotherhood, of alliance, and of a war that would reshape the galaxy. The apex predators had chosen their side, and it was not the side of their former masters. Jake smiled as he realized that the Zephyrians had just lost their most powerful weapons to the very people they had planned to destroy. The real battle was just beginning. The captured Zephyrian facility became a base of operations for the unlikely alliance between humans and Volf creatures. Jake worked alongside Lisa and Pete to understand the alien technology while Grimfang organized his people for the battles. Ahead, 3 days after the uprising, their scanners detected incoming ships. The Zephyrian Empire had learned about the rebellion and was sending a fleet to crush it. Jake watched the massive vessels appear in orbit through the facility's observation windows. 12 warships, Pete reported from the communication center. They're preparing to land troops. Grimfang stood beside Jake, his amber eyes studying the enemy ships. The great predator had learned much about human technology in just a few days, and his tactical mind was already working on solutions. We take their ships, Grimfang said in his improving English. Use against them. Jake nodded. It was a dangerous plan, but they had no choice. The facility could not withstand a full assault, and they needed transportation to warn Earth about the coming invasion. The attack came at dawn. Zephyrian dropships landed around the facility, disgorging hundreds of soldiers and their remaining loyal Volf creatures. But the aliens had made a critical mistake. They expected to face demoralized prisoners and obedient weapons. Instead, they encountered determined humans and free predators fighting together. Jake had positioned himself in the facility's control center with Lisa and Pete. Through the cameras, he watched Grimfang lead a pack of freed Volf creatures against the first wave of attackers. The sight was magnificent and terrible. The liberated predators fought with a fury their masters had never seen. They were no longer slaves forced to kill for others. They were warriors defending their freedom and protecting their human allies. Their natural hunting instincts, combined with their knowledge of Zephyrian tactics, made them devastating opponents. The left flank is breaking through, Lisa called out. Monitoring the battle on multiple screens, Jake grabbed a communication device and contacted Grimfang directly. Friend, they're coming through Sector 7. I see, came Grimfang's reply, followed by a series of howls that sent instructions to his pack. The Volf creatures moved like liquid death through the facility's corridors. They used ventilation shafts, maintenance tunnels, and their natural agility to appear where the Zephyrians least expected them. The aliens' formations crumbled under attacks from above, below, and behind, but the Zephyrians had numbers on their side. For every soldier that fell, 2 more took his place. Jake realized they needed to change tactics quickly or be overwhelmed. Pete, can you get those transport ships started? Jake asked. His friend was already working on the captured Zephyrian vessels in the facility's hangar. Give me 10 more minutes and I'll have engines running on 3 of them. Jake made a decision. That would determine the outcome of the battle. He activated the facility's communication system and broadcast a message on all frequencies. This is Jake Martinez, speaking to all Zephyrian forces, he said clearly. Your weapons have turned against you. Your apex predators now fight for freedom. Surrender now, and you will be spared. The response came from the Zephyrian fleet commander, his voice cold with rage. Human scum, you have corrupted our property. We will reclaim our weapons and execute every prisoner. They're not weapons, Jake replied firmly. They're people just like us, and they've chosen their side. As if to prove his point, Grimfang and his pack burst into the main hangar where several Zephyrian squads had taken position. The battle was swift and decisive. The freed predators fought with purpose and intelligence, not mindless aggression. Jake watched as Grimfang personally confronted a Zephyrian officer who was trying to use a neural control device on a captured Volf creature. The great predator destroyed the device with one swipe of his claws, then helped his fellow creature to his feet. Pack, Grimfang said to the newly freed predator. Family. The word sent chills down Jake's spine. These creatures were not just allies of convenience. They had become family to each other, united by their shared struggle for freedom. Pete's voice crackled over the radio. Engines are online. We can launch whenever you're ready. The plan was simple but dangerous. They would take the captured transport ships and strike directly at the Zephyrian fleet in orbit. It was the only way to prevent the aliens from calling for reinforcements and to capture ships capable of reaching Earth. Jake, Lisa, and Pete boarded the first transport along with a dozen freed Volf creatures led by Grimfang. The other ships carried mixed crews of humans and predators, all working together toward their common goal. They launched from the facility. Jake felt the weight of responsibility on his shoulders. The fate of Earth and possibly the entire galaxy depended on their success. The space battle that followed was unlike anything in recorded history. Human ingenuity combined with Volf creature instincts created a fighting force the Zephyrians had never encountered. The freed predators adapted quickly to zero-gravity combat, using their claws and agility to devastating effect in boarding actions. Jake found himself fighting alongside Grimfang on the bridge of a Zephyrian cruiser. The great predator moved through the corridors like a force of nature, protecting his human friend while striking down their enemies. Behind you! Jake shouted as a Zephyrian soldier tried to ambush Grimfang. The Volf creature spun and caught the attacker with one massive paw, then tossed him aside like a toy. Thank you, friend, Grimfang said without breaking stride. Ship after ship fell to their assault. The Zephyrian crews, trained to fight conventional enemies, could not adapt to the chaotic boarding tactics of their former weapons. Within hours, the entire fleet was under the control of the Human Volf Alliance. In the flagship's command center, Jake and Grimfang studied the navigation charts and communication logs. What they found confirmed their worst fears and greatest hopes. The Zephyrian invasion fleet bound for Earth was massive, but it was still weeks away from human space. More importantly, the fleet was counting on their Volf creature shock troops to spearhead the assault. We go to Earth, Grimfang said, looking at the star charts. Warn your people. Prepare them. Jake nodded, then had another thought. What about your people? The other Volf creatures still enslaved throughout Zephyrian space? Grimfang's amber eyes grew distant. We free them all, every pack, every family. And so began the greatest liberation campaign in galactic history. The captured fleet, now crewed by humans and freed Volf creatures, struck at Zephyrian facilities across dozens of star systems. Each victory freed more predators and added more ships to their growing armada. The sight of their former weapons turning against them broke the Zephyrian Empire's will to fight. Faced with rebellion from within and invasion from without, their military collapsed within months. Jake stood on the observation deck of their flagship as it entered Earth's solar system. Beside him, Grimfang watched the blue-green world grow larger on the screen. Beautiful, the Volf creature said softly. Like the stories you told. Behind them, the deck was filled with both humans and Volf creatures, all working together as one crew. Children of both species played together in the corridors, learning each other's languages and customs. Lisa approached them with a report from the communications center. The Zephyrian invasion fleet has surrendered, she said with a smile. Their Volf creatures mutinied when they heard about our alliance. The war is over. Jake felt tears in his eyes as he looked at his friend Grimfang. The great predator who had once been a weapon of oppression was now a symbol of freedom for his entire species. What will your people do now? Jake asked. Grimfang looked out at the stars, then back at his human friend. We build new life. Together, humans and Volf people, as family. Jake reached out and placed his hand on Grimfang's shoulder. The gesture that had once been impossible was now natural and welcome. Family, Jake agreed, on the planet below, representatives of both species prepared to sign a treaty that would bind their peoples together in friendship and mutual protection. The apex predators who had been designed to destroy humanity had instead become their greatest allies, and in the depths of space, other enslaved species watched and learned. The age of the Zephyrian Empire was ending, and the age of freedom was just beginning.